Have you ever noticed that the moments you feel most relaxed when drinking are also the moments when you are no longer yourself? Maybe you call it unwinding, having fun, de-stressing after a long day. But if you pause just for a few seconds and look deeper at that moment through a different lens, you'll see a chilling truth. The comfort you think you're feeling is a sign that you've just disconnected from your soul. Many ancient cultures once called alcohol a spirit, but not because it made you more alive. Rather, because it was believed to consume the soul of the living. In Arabic, the word al-kul, the root of alcohol, means a spirit that extracts the essence. Alchemists believed it to be a substance that separates the soul from matter. Don't believe in the soul? That's okay. Then hear it from science. A 2017 study from Harvard revealed even a small amount of alcohol reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that controls ethics, self-awareness, and empathy. In simple terms, you drink to disconnect from your true self. You thought you were escaping the pressure? In reality, you just lost your ability to respond to it as yourself. And this happens again, every week, every party, every drink, until one day you no longer know what the real you even is. All you know is, without alcohol, you feel empty. If that makes you feel sad, know that you're not alone. Because millions of people on this planet live inside the same illusion. An illusion the world has learned to praise, to glorify, to legalize. No one ever told you there's a part of you crying for help every time you drink. Not your body, your soul. And if you're here, hearing these words, it might be because of that part of you hasn't gone completely silent. We won't talk about morals, no right or wrong. I'm not here to tell you to quit drinking. I'm just inviting you to look again and to remember what made you reach for it in the first place. Because sometimes awakening isn't about changing your life. It's simply about daring to look where you once refused to see. Long before the word alcohol appeared in modern culture, it was once an occult symbol, a substance that didn't just ferment, but transcended. Not only evaporating reason, but extracting the soul. The root of the word alcohol comes from Arabic, al-kul. Originally, it wasn't even something to drink. It was a powdered cosmetic used to line the eyes, like in paintings of Egyptian queens. But for Middle Eastern alchemists, al-kul had a very different meaning. It was seen as a substance that could extract the essence, separating the soul from the original form. And that is where everything began to shift. In ancient Hermetic texts, alcohol is called a volatile spirit, meaning during distillation, you're pulling out the spirit of matter and leaving behind an empty shell. That's why, as far back as the Middle Ages, alchemists wrote, alcohol takes the spirit, not just from the plant, but from the man who drinks it. Why did ancient civilizations like Egypt, Sumer, and Greece associate alcohol with the gods? Because they understood this was a gateway, but a gateway that could lead up or down. To the awakened, alcohol scrambles the energy field, but for shamans and ritual priests, it was used to call spirits, open invisible doors. Are you starting to see the connection? It's no accident that in the West, we call it spirits. Not drink, but spirit, soul. Because after thousands of years, even though culture has shifted, deep in the collective unconscious, humanity still knows alcohol doesn't just intoxicate, it activates a different energetic state. But what most people don't realize is That state isn't always light. When alcohol was used in ancient rites, it had to be paired with intention, ritual, spiritual protection. Today, people drink in loneliness, in unconsciousness, in unhealed pain. And that's when the doorway opens. But instead of gods entering, something else comes in. The book The Kabbalion says, "As above, so below, as within, so without." If chaos lives within you, your drink will guide you into chaos. Alchemy was never just about turning lead into gold. It was the art of soul transformation. And to them, alcohol was a potent form of magic, but extremely dangerous when misused. We don't need to return to ancient Egypt to understand this. We only need to look at ourselves every time we drink. Do you feel like you fade? Do you lose chunks of memory? Do you behave like someone else? Have you ever wondered, who's taking over your body in those moments? If you still doubt that alcohol can separate you from yourself, let science make it crystal clear. In a 2017 study published by Harvard Medical School, researchers found that even a small amount of alcohol was enough to reduce activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for moral awareness, self-reflection, impulse control, and social connection. In other words, the very region that anchors your true sense of self is the first to shut down when you drink. That's why you say things you normally wouldn't dare to. You do things you never thought you would. You unleash emotions that have been buried for years. But if you're no longer the one in control, if the part that's acting isn't you, then a chilling question arises. Who is in control? Biologically, alcohol acts as a central nervous system depressant. It triggers GABA, an inhibitory neurotransmitter, while slowing communication between neurons. The result? Your emotions blur, your pain gets covered, and your inner voice, it begins to fade. The US National Institute on Alcohol Abuse warns, long-term drinking causes gray matter shrinkage, impairs memory, decision-making, and emotional flexibility. But there's one consequence that science doesn't always name. Yet you feel it every time you've been drunk. The emptiness, a subtle hollowing, a sense that a part of you fell away somewhere and you can't quite get it back. Many people, once sober, say things like, "I don't recognize myself when I did that. I'm ashamed, but it didn't feel like me. I felt possessed. I felt lost, even surrounded by friends." That's not a coincidence. In psychology, this is called dissociation, a separation from the self and reality. Alcohol causes this with remarkable ease. But the real danger is your brain can learn it. And if repeated often enough, you won't need alcohol to dissociate anymore. You'll begin living as a disconnected self, no longer remembering who you are, no longer sensing where you are. You no longer know what truly brings you joy. At that point, the question is no longer, should I drink? But rather, do I still want to reconnect with myself? If your physical body has skin to protect it from bacteria, then your soul also has a layer of protection, what many spiritual traditions call the aura. The aura isn't just some mystical concept from books. It's a measurable bioelectromagnetic field, captured by technologies like GDV cameras and Kirlian photography. It's a vibration field, radiating from your heartbeat, your brain waves, and even the emotions you've never voiced. And every time you drink alcohol, that vibration field weakens. Not just dims, it fractures, tears, and opens gates of vulnerability. In anthroposophy, a system of spiritual science founded by Rudolf Steiner, alcohol is seen as a force that dissolves the light structure of the subtle body, leading to what's called spiritual vulnerability. Put simply, when your aura is torn, you don't just lose protection. You become a sponge for chaotic energies around you. You're not just intoxicated by alcohol. You're intoxicated by the energy of the crowd, by unresolved emotions, and even by unseen entities floating nearby. In many indigenous shamanic traditions, a drunk person is never allowed into the sacred circle because they carry unbound energies that cannot be controlled. And have you noticed? When you're drunk, your emotions become extreme. Many people cry for no reason. Some explode in rage, as if someone else is speaking through them. Others behave like strangers and remember nothing the next day. Why? Because when the aura is torn, you're no longer at the controls. You become an open house. Anyone can walk in. In neuroscience, there's a phenomenon called transient amnesia, temporary memory loss due to electrical disturbances in the hippocampus. But on the energy level, ancient spiritual teachers called this soul unanchoring. You're still here, but your inner light has drifted somewhere else. If you've ever felt that strange emptiness after drinking, if you've ever felt something following you after a night of partying, if you've ever woken up completely drained and didn't know why, know this: it's not random. It's the consequence of a subtle tear no one ever warned you about. Just like your body, your aura can heal, but only when you stop doing what keeps hurting it in the first place. You're not addicted to alcohol. You're addicted to the state it brings: forgetting, letting go. The absence of that heavy feeling that silently presses against your chest every day. Very few people drink because they love the burning taste. They drink to silence the noise inside. According to the American Psychological Association, APA, over 65% of regular alcohol users drink to cope with unresolved emotional stress, a behavior known as avoidance-based coping, escaping instead of facing. And here's the problem: escape might give you momentary relief, but it never erases the pain. It only freezes it, wraps it up, and buries it deeper into the subconscious. Every time you drink to forget, you're pressing the pause button on healing. Dr. Gabor Mate, a renowned expert on trauma and addiction, once said, "Don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain." And that question is one most people never dare to ask themselves. Because sometimes sobriety hurts more than anything else. Being sober means remembering. Being sober means facing the abandonment, the betrayal, the wounds, the misunderstanding. Being sober means realizing how long you've been away from yourself. Alcohol is not the enemy. It's a warm blanket we reach for when the cold inside becomes too much. The issue is, we've wrapped ourselves in it for so long that we've forgotten we ever carried light. Your nervous system, after prolonged drinking, starts to learn. Only when I have alcohol do I feel calm. It stops producing enough natural serotonin and dopamine. It weakens in its ability to self-regulate. And then, with no specific reason, you feel sad. With no one hurting you, you feel unworthy. You enter the loop: wound, escape, emptiness. Repeat. The question isn't, how do I stop drinking? It's, how do I relearn to sit with myself without needing to run? The answer doesn't come from willpower. It comes from gentleness, from learning to feel what's inside without fear, without judgment, from forgiving yourself for needing alcohol in the first place. You did the best you could with what you knew and the pain you carried. And today, just by being willing to look, you're already no longer in the same place. One of the most common things you'll hear from people who drink is, "I only feel like myself when I'm drunk." Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Because if you can only be yourself when you've lost control, then who's showing up at that moment? This is one of alcohol's most seductive illusions. It activates the root chakra, the center of survival, pleasure, and instinct. At the same time, it dulls the crown chakra, the seat of intuition, truth, and higher consciousness. The result? You feel real, but it's just your instincts overwhelming your soul. That feeling of being yourself is simply you, temporarily shedding the social mask. And because you were never taught how to be real while sober, you believe drunk is real, but in truth, it's just you being too numb to fear. Social psychology studies confirm alcohol suppresses behavioral control and enhances impulsive action. You talk more, you laugh louder, you live boldly. But ask yourself, does that version of freedom bring you closer to your soul? Or does it just mute its voice entirely? In Hermetic philosophy, there's a concept called false elevation, a sensation of rising while your frequency is falling. It creates the illusion of liberation, but liberation from what? From your very center. That's what alcohol does. It lifts you for 1 or 2 hours, then drops you into a pit for 3 or 4 days. The emotional aftermath is usually guilt, emptiness, confusion, and hypersensitivity. And you think it's because you're weak. That's the spiritual tax alcohol collects from you. There's a bitter truth few dare to face. If you need a substance to feel free, you lost your freedom long ago. You weren't wrong for reaching for alcohol. You were just seeking the right thing through a path that only takes you further from it. You don't need alcohol to laugh loudly. You don't need intoxication to dance. You don't need numbness to stop hurting. You just need to remember. Remember this. Freedom doesn't come from losing control. It comes from being present enough to choose. And that can only happen when you're sober enough to hear yourself. But it doesn't end there. There's a specific part of your brain that loves alcohol, not for the taste, but for the feeling. Alcohol triggers your dopamine system, the same reward center that lights up when you win, fall in love, or feel validated. In that moment, you don't just feel light, you feel powerful. You become a braver version of yourself, someone who dares to speak, move, live. But tragically, that version only exists under chemical control. It's not the real you. It's a false ego, created by dopamine and unconsciousness. And when the alcohol fades, so does that ego, leaving just you and the void. A void big enough to make you believe you're nothing without it. That's the cruelest trap of the freedom while drunk illusion. The truth is, what you long for isn't intoxication. What you ache for is to live authentically without being judged, to be free without having to be drunk, to be loved even when you're not pleasing anyone. And you deserve that. Not when you change, but even now, while you're still learning how to show up again. You don't need to be stronger to be loved. You just need to be clear enough to see you were always lovable. True freedom doesn't come from breaking barriers through chemicals. True freedom is when you can sit in the pain, in the emptiness, in the wound, and still say to yourself, I'm staying, I'm not running anymore. No need for grand speeches, no need for triumph. Just one quiet sentence can shift your entire soul. I've gone far from myself, but today I choose to return. And if you say that with sincerity, you don't need applause. You don't need a ceremony. You don't need rehab. Because your soul has already hurt you. There's a kind of addiction even subtler than alcohol itself. It's the addiction to society's justification for drinking. Because if you're drunk, but everyone around you is too, then you no longer feel out of place. You belong. You're laughing, patted on the back, accepted. No one sees you as having a problem. And just like that, a collective ritual repeats without needing a name. In most modern cultures, alcohol isn't just a substance. It's a social symbol. Entering college, hazing parties, weddings, champagne toasts, business meetings, drinks New Year's, Christmas, birthdays, funerals, always alcohol. And if you say, "I don't drink," you immediately break the ritual. A part of you starts to wonder, is something wrong with me? But in truth, that feeling of wrongness doesn't come from you. It comes from a system programmed to make drunkenness feel normal, to make it seem like adulthood, belonging. The World Health Organization, WHO, reported in 2022, over 3 million deaths annually are alcohol-related. Tens of millions more live with declining mental health, never realizing that alcohol is the hidden root. What's more frightening, these aren't just hardcore addicts. Most are social drinkers, consistent, casual, living under the illusion of control. Now you see it. What we call freedom to drink is often social conditioning in disguise. From movies, ads, social media, alcohol is always paired with seduction, joy, success, bold personality, even artistic awakening. But have you ever seen an ad that shows the 3-day depression after drinking, the late-night call you forgot, the dream you couldn't recall, or the empty stare in the mirror the next morning? Number, because society doesn't want you to see that. Because if you did see, you'd start asking questions. Questions like, why do I have to drink to have fun? Why does every celebration require getting drunk? Why is alcohol present in every corner of life, as if it's a sacred right? And most importantly, who profits from me continuing to drink? The answer might be uncomfortable, but that's a good sign, because every real awakening begins with discomfort. You don't have to fight society. You just need to be conscious enough not to follow it blindly. This collective rationalization isn't random. It's not just culture, it's industry. The global alcohol industry is worth over $1.6 trillion, and every year it spends billions injecting this message into our subconscious. Alcohol is freedom. Alcohol is happiness. Alcohol is strength. Through movies, music, ads, memes, they don't need you to be addicted. They just need you to believe that drinking is normal. Have you ever noticed, in Hollywood films, the coolest, loneliest, most wounded characters always have a glass in hand? Not a coincidence. It's an emotional strategy. They want you to see yourself in that character. And then you begin to associate drinking with your deepest feelings. Once that happens, alcohol stops being a drink. It becomes a ritual for feeling real in your unconscious mind. And so, you defend it. You call it part of culture. You push back when someone suggests stopping, not because you love it, but because it's become a symbol of your inner resistance. But let me say this slowly. You don't need alcohol to be real. You just need a world that doesn't force you to pretend. And here's the darkest truth. Alcohol doesn't only harm individuals, it alters the entire collective energy field. Every time you step into a space where many are drinking, you're not just encountering noise, smoke, or laughter. You're stepping into a vibrational sinkhole, a space of lowered resonance. In quantum physics, everything emits energy. Many drunk people in a small space equals chaotic frequency convergence. The collective field becomes distorted, creating openings for lower energies to enter. That's why many people say, after a party, even if they didn't drink, they feel off, empty, or disconnected. It's not just psychological, it's energetic. And no one ever taught you how to protect yourself from that. But you can relearn. You can begin with a gentle refusal. I'm here, but I won't dissolve into this. I choose to keep my energy whole, even when others don't. No need to prove anything. No need to explain, because you don't need to fight the whole world. Just stop abandoning yourself. If one drink can slice a subtle tear in your energy field, then even the smallest act of mindfulness can begin to stitch it back together. Healing doesn't have to be grand, it just has to begin. No one truly heals by force. We only change when we believe we deserve to return to our true self. Here are 3 stages of energy recovery, simple yet profound. No need to fight alcohol, no need to force anything. Just gently return and choose yourself. Stage 1. Awareness. Change your perception before your behavior. You don't need to quit drinking immediately. Just ask this one question each time you raise a glass. Am I drinking for joy or to fill a void? Start journaling how you feel before, during, and after drinking. Not to control, but to reconnect. Suggested practice: write an energy journal. Each day, describe your physical state, emotions, and energy level. Use a bracelet, small stone, or bead string as a grounding anchor to pause for a few seconds before you drink. That's it. You've begun the process of becoming friends with yourself again. Stage 2. Replacement. Choose a new ritual instead of loneliness. Alcohol isn't just a substance. It's a ritual of communication with yourself and others. So you need a new ritual, not just to remove the old one. Suggested replacements: cacao ceremony. Drink pure cacao in silence, with soft music. Tea ritual. Brew tea. Sit quietly without a phone. No talking. Just be. Take 3 deep breaths before any gathering where alcohol might be involved. When you have a meaningful ritual, your brain learns to self-soothe without chemical aid. Stage 3. Reintegration. Find others who resonate with you. One of the reasons letting go of alcohol feels hard is because so many of your relationships revolve around it. Don't fight the whole world. Find a new one. There are awakening communities forming everywhere. Not preachy, not labeled. Just humans who've hurt, who's fallen, and who are walking back slowly. Try starting with: join an online meditation group. Try 7 days off social media. Turn on your breath instead. Listen to binaural beats for healing before sleep. If you'd like, I've linked a free energy practice playlist in the description. It's not a magic solution, just a path home. You don't have to heal to become someone else. You just need to stop running from who you are. And every small action you take is a message to your soul saying, I'm still here. I'm ready to come back. But here's something few ever tell you. Healing isn't just understanding. Healing is feeling, which means it's not about analyzing your past, your trauma, or the cause. It's about returning to your body, because every unresolved emotion lives in your body. And alcohol, whether by accident or habit, disconnects you from those signals. If you've ever drank to escape the pressure in your chest, to silence the suffocating breath, to quiet the tightness in your gut, then here's a gentle invitation to begin returning. Practice. Body connection. Meditation. 5 minutes a day. No music, no reason, no goal, just sit. Place your hand on your belly. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath through the nose. Hold for 3 seconds. Exhale slowly through the mouth. Feel the air move across your heart. When discomfort arises, don't flinch, don't shift, don't judge. Just whisper, "I see you. I'm here." If tears come, let them fall. If your chest tightens, let it tighten. Your body is releasing the pain that alcohol once pushed down. You can do this before sleep or before gatherings that may trigger drinking. After 21 days, your body will begin forming a new thread of connection with you. One more idea. If you ever drank to escape the feeling of being lost, try spending 1 day a week walking without headphones, just feeling. As you walk, ask, "Can I feel the wind? Can I feel my feet on the earth? Can I be here without needing anyone to validate that I exist?" These are not complicated practices. They are the language your body once spoke and you forgot. There is no miracle overnight, but subtle vibrations will begin to stir again, simply because you sat with yourself without judgment. This is not detox. This is reconciliation, a reunion with your body, your emotions, and the soul once abandoned in the fog of alcohol. And perhaps just that is enough for you to not need the drink anymore. If you're still here, still listening to these words, then maybe it's not because this video is special, but because your soul is ready. Not ready to quit drinking, not ready to become someone better, but ready to remember. Remember that you were once a being full of light, that you once laughed without stimulation, that you once felt joy without having to silence your inner voice. No one knows exactly when they wake up. It doesn't come like a bell ringing. It doesn't show up like a phone notification. It arrives as a whisper within. And you, brave soul, you listened. You don't need to understand everything today. You don't need to be forever sober. You just need to stay, feel, and be honest with the part of you that's gently trembling inside. There may come a day when you feel lost again. You may raise a glass. You may forget this conversation. And that's okay too. No one's here to judge you. There's no reward for being the best at quitting. Only a peaceful place inside you, still waiting for your return. And if one day you feel empty, not because of alcohol, but because of the distance from your true self, come back here, not to find answers, but just to remember. Everything you've been seeking is already seeking you. You don't have to walk away from everything to see the light. You just need to turn toward it. Slowly, truthfully, and gently with yourself. And if today is that day, if today is the day you turn back toward the light, then congratulations. Not because you quit drinking, not because you're now awake, but because you've chosen not to turn away from your soul any longer. Take your time and remember, healing never comes from force. It comes from one small step, repeated in love. Thank you for listening, for being brave enough to stay until the end. And if someday you want to return, you know you can, because of this door was never locked. You don't need to quit alcohol to become a better person. You don't need to be completely clean to be considered awakened. You only need to take an honest look. The truth is, many people quit drinking, but are still addicted to self-judgment. They still carry guilt whenever they think about their past. They still secretly look at others and whisper, "I'm not good enough." That's not awakening. That's a subtle kind of prison, labeled as repentance. Real transformation doesn't happen when you quit something. It happens when you change the way you see it. Instead of asking, "Am I doing something wrong?" ask yourself, "Am I repeating a behavior that no longer fits who I truly am?" This is not a game of willpower, it's a game of honesty. Alcohol, like everything else, is neutral. It only becomes dangerous when we use it to hide the parts of us that are still unhealed. If you want to keep drinking, then do it with awareness. Have a glass, but be fully present with it. Feel each sip. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? What do I truly need? Is this a choice or a reflex? Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment of real presence in the middle of intoxication to make you realize you no longer want to be intoxicated. Transformation begins when you can say, I'm not resisting anything. I'm just gently returning to what feels aligned with my energy today. You are not a bad person because you have an addiction. You are simply a soul that once lost connection with itself. And the return doesn't need to be dramatic. It only takes a whisper within, I'm willing to look, without running away. Because once you dare to look, you'll realize you never lost your light. You only turned your back on it for a while. When you understand what alcohol is, you don't need to demonize it. You're no longer seduced by it, and you don't need to fight it. You just stop finding it necessary. And in that no longer needing, you become truly free. Because freedom doesn't come from fighting. It comes from no longer forcing yourself to keep running. Deep transformation doesn't come from big decisions. It comes from one small moment, when you're awake enough to realize, I don't need alcohol to feel worthy of life. I don't need drunkenness to feel liberated. I don't need anything except to be fully present with my soul. You don't need to strain to let go. You just need to stop clinging. And you'll see, when you stop trying so hard to quit drinking, alcohol quietly loses its grip. Not because you're strong, but because you no longer need it to replace the light you've remembered inside you. That light never disappeared. It was only covered in dust. The dust of expectations, of pain, of a society that taught you. Freedom means drinking. Strength means enduring silently. Depth means hiding in intoxication before daring to express. But you know what? True light is quiet. It's not dazzling, not loud, not flashy. It's simply there, and it waits for you to come home. That's transformation. Not urgent, not grand. Just you, turning back to face the light you once avoided. And then you'll see, every fear you had while drunk was fear of your light. Every moment of weakness was believing you weren't lovable unless numbed. But you are enough, even if you're not ready to change, even if you're still drinking, even if all you've done is listen this far. Because the light doesn't need you to change before it shines. It only asks you to open your eyes once again.